Welcome everyone to another episode of our Wisdom of the Heart video series. Today's topic is going to be living in the flow. And it's interesting because A Course of Love actually uses that word flow, F-L-O-W, in quite a few places in the book. And let me just briefly hold this up for everyone to see. This is A Course of Love. It's 3 books, the Course, the Treatises, and the Dialogues. And the first receiver is Mari Perrone. Okay, so let me introduce today's guest. First-time guest on Wisdom of the Heart, James Willis. And he is joining us from Queensland, Australia. So welcome, James. It's an honor to have you with us today.
Thanks, Lynn. Nice to be here. And the honor is all mine, believe me.
Okay, so yeah, we're going to get started, and I think James is going to start us off with a few lines. We're going to start with day 5 in the 40 days and the 40 nights, which is entitled Access to Unity. And he's going to read us a couple lines, and we're going to get started. Whenever you're ready. Yeah.
All right. It's from paragraph 22. Effort, as translated by the ego, was about turning everything that was given into what you could only work hard to attain, and thereby claim as your individual accomplishment. Obviously, union is not about this. While the ego is gone, wishful thinking maybe, effort remains. And while it remains, you will not realize full access to what you are given. We are speaking here of letting your form serve union, and union serve your form. This service is effortless, for it is the way of creation.
Beautiful. Thank you for reading that. There's a lot there.
There always is.
There always is.
And this jumped out at me because of relatively recent experience where the universe had organized to get me into a situation here where I'm living alone for the first time in my life. And I realized that the move was finished and everything was settled. And I said, okay, so, what do I need to do now? And the answer I got was very clear, which was, you don't need to do anything. You just need to be who you are in the now. And so I just need to be. My thought process, I'm ashamed to say, went noticeably along the lines of, well, how do I do that? How do I just be? And then I realized how stupid that question was. But I realized also it's the way the world works, because we spend our lives learning how to do things and then doing them. And whether that means, for earning a living or whatever it was, when you change jobs, your new employer introduces you to the people you're going to work with and shows you how to do what it is that you're being employed to do. And then you do what's called learning on the job. But that business of doing is really ingrained into the way that our consciousnesses are brought up. And it just made me realize that with Lynn wanting to talk about living in the flow is much more about being than it is about doing.
Yeah.
As someone once said, it's no coincidence that we're called human beings and not human doings.
That's true. That's absolutely true. Yeah, and maybe we could go on a little bit about what it actually is about living in the flow or living in the now, and more grounded in the present moment.
Well, a recent experience of mine, I woke up one morning seriously dizzy. And in all the years, I have never, ever been that dizzy. and it lasted for 10 days. I ended up going to a doctor and trying to find out if there was a physical cause. My feeling about it when I asked internally was, no, it's not physical. And about the third day, I noticed something for the first time, and it really made me pay attention, because the dizziness was so bad that I couldn't get out of a chair quickly. I couldn't get out of bed quickly. I couldn't walk down the hallway without bouncing off the walls. So it was really quite disconcerting. But it was the realization that I was not dizzy. It's my body that was dizzy. And, you know, right back in Course of Miracles days, you know, there's the lesson that everyone remembers, which is, I am not a body, I am free, I am as God created me. And, you know, I've talked to lots of people who can get hooked on the fact that they're not a body. And I've known intellectually that I'm not a body for more than 30 years.
Yeah.
And if someone had said, are you a body? I'd have said, no, I'm an eternal spiritual being having a human experience, you know, aren't you? And this was the first time that I really, really got it. And by experiencing not being the body is a whole different thing from knowing that you're not one. Trust me, it's a whole different thing. So when I was walking down the hallway now, it's as though I was slightly behind and slightly above my body, watching my body walk. And the body was thinking, ooh, I'm going to bounce off the walls here. And I was thinking, yeah, the body's really dizzy. So it was an experience that was quite interesting, shall I say, in inverted commas. And I was really glad when it went away. But it made me both realize the really important difference between thinking you know something and experiencing that knowledge. But also it was a real experience of living in the now, because I was watching my feet go along. And if I was walking on rough ground, I was watching my feet be careful where they put themselves. And it was illuminating, to say the least. I'm really glad it stopped. But the feeling that the inner knowing of not being my body didn't go away. That stayed with me.
Yeah, so that was all translated into a lived experience. So do you feel like that was like when you were walking and you were more fully present to what your body was doing? Is that what you're saying? That
Absolutely.
was like you're in the flow? That was kind of like you're in the flow moment?
Yeah.
That
Sorry, it was like I was aware of the flow because I was watching my body do it.
Yeah.
And okay, yes, I've got used to it, and it's not as constant and immediate as it was.
Yeah.
But even now, if I move my arm, I can see that it's my body moving my arm, and, you know, doing that. But that's still not me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the Course of Love says that the body is actually a representation of who we are. It's not the truth of who we are. And of course, the Course of Miracles says that too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Did you want to? The other thing I had was I have an experience I kind of wanted to share, but did you want to say anything about that? The line in here that says, we're speaking here of letting your form serve union and union serve your form. Did you want to say a couple words about that before I have something I wanted to share? We both had talked about this before, about this is something with could be referring to the elevated true self of form, capital S. Did you want to say a couple of words about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the thrust of Course of Love is it's a course ultimately in how to elevate the self of form, which is the ultimate goal as it's set out in the course. And that line about letting your form serve union and union serve your form just brings up this image to me of being in union, but having and living through having the living experience in form. And the experience of form is helping illuminate union, because that's what creation was about. And union is helping by illuminating the form experience.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah, and
don't know if it
so
didn't make sense, but
yeah, I was just going to say that as it says, like again, our bodies are a representation, and there's a difference between a true representation and a false representation. And to me, that this elevated capital S self of form is about living as the Christ. I mean, we're allowing the flow of love to move through us as we become the open vessel. My experience, I wanted to share, about being in the flow. We had kind of talked about sports. This is a well-known phenomenon documented in sports. It's called being in the zone, and it's a lot of athletes talk about it. And there's actually a line in A Course of Law that mentions that when an athlete thinks about what they're doing, they falter, or when a piano player thinks about what she's doing, she loses it. She loses the pure presence of the moment, and it stops the flow. And so I was on this hiking climb. I went to this really steep, long climb that I normally do, and down in a national park close to where I live. And normally it's a very hard climb, and there's really steep gradients on it. And so I went to this climb, and I started, and all of a sudden something shifted, and I started just going up this climb, and everything was just purely effortless. There was no struggle. There was no efforting. I didn't feel tired, and I made it all the way up to the top of the climb. And when I got there, I realized that I wasn't tired at all. And this, like I said, this was a super hard climb. It's straight up 3 miles. And I didn't even know where I was. I looked around. I thought maybe I had come up the wrong climb. I'd taken the wrong hike. And then I saw the 2 rocks that I normally sit on. But I felt so amazing. I just couldn't believe that I had done this, got to the top, and I wasn't tired. I was ready to do Everest. But what I realized, though, is that I was out of my thinking mind totally. I got into some kind of flow rhythm going up this super steep climb, and my mind, I wasn't in my mind at all. And something just shifted, and it allowed me, my training and my skill set intersected with the challenge at hand, which was the climb. And there was just like a perfect synchronicity, and I just went up, and it was effortless. And that's all I can say. I was in the zone or in the flow. I called it my gold medal of hiking.
yeah,
Still amazed
great.
today. I'm still amazed. I think about it, like, how did I do this? And I know how I did it. I got to the flow, and because I was not in my thinking mind. Maybe we have time now to start looking at the New Lord's Prayer. This is another experience that James had. He actually got this through revelation. And this is also about living in the flow. And so we're going to look at that for a few minutes. And James is going to read it to us. And then there's some things he wants to show us in the prayer, and maybe another quote to kind of highlight it. It's really beautiful, and he's going to let us know all about it.
Okay, so I'll read it first, shall I?
Yeah.
Okay. So, our Father, my constant friend and guide, help me to see your light in every brother and sister I meet, and to live in the knowing that thy name is love. Thy kingdom is within me, and thy creation is unfolding here and now as I speak. Consciously living in the flow of loving creation fulfills all needs to perfection, and the only forgiveness required is by me of myself. And then I can know who I truly am. Living as who I truly am, I know not of temptation, and what I once saw as evil is a call for help that I can help to answer. A call for love, that I can help to answer. For in reality, you and I, Father, are one, and ours is the kingdom, and we are the power and the glory. In this eternal moment of now, I am one with thee. Amen.
Beautiful. Thank you for reading that. I just love it.
So this turned up as the absolute classic example for me of thoughts I didn't think, because I was staying with someone else and living an extremely 3D life at the time, and I was doing something desperately ordinary, and I have no idea what it is now, but I wasn't in the middle of meditation or anything. And suddenly this line, "Our Father, who art my constant friend and guide," was in my head, in my mind, in my consciousness, whatever you want to call it. And it stopped me in my tracks. I thought, what? Where's that come from? Whoa, that doesn't make any sense. I wonder if there's some more. And there was nothing else. Now, I just have to insert here that I went to a church boarding school. So for eight times a week, 38 weeks of the year for 9 years, I was in a group of people saying the Lord's Prayer. And that comes out at over 2,500 times. And even though I've never been a churchgoer since I left school, the words "Our Father who art," as a trigger, that's the Lord's Prayer. So the next day, again in the middle of something, middle of nothing in particular, another line turned up. And again, it was definitely a thought I didn't think, but it made me go and write the lines down because I wondered what was going on. And then again, I said, "Is there any more?" And I got, "No, nothing. Nothing came." But the third day, I got this line that says, "And the only forgiveness required is by me of myself." And it triggered things for me because back in the late 80s, I just moved interstate, and a friend wanted to take me to a meeting that someone was going to talk about this new book they'd come across called A Course in Miracles. And I didn't know what it was, but I thought, well, yes, I'll go. And the guy started the talk by paraphrasing the beginning of lesson 46. And if you have a copy of the book, you can have a look. The paraphrase goes something like, "God has never forgiven anybody for anything because he does not condemn. And forgiveness is only required where there is condemnation." That's a paraphrase. Mm-hmm. So that, in a way, because if you think how many times churchgoers ask for forgiveness from God, mm-hmm. really triggered something in me. And of course, the line in the prayer, "Forgive us our trespasses, mm-hmm. as we forgive those who trespass against us." Yeah. So we're asking God for something that maybe I need to rethink. This was my thinking. So that third line made me really pay attention. And thereafter, over about the next week, I kept getting a line, not in order in the prayer, mm-hmm. and I put them together and made that. And then I said, well, okay, I may have misheard some of this, and I got a sort of tidy up version of it, which interestingly to me took the words "who art" out of the first line and inserted the second line about "help me to see your light in every brother and sister that I meet," which, is spiritual path stuff. It's realizing we're all one. Yeah. But the interesting thing I thought particularly about the prayer was the way that the Course of Love talks about being the end of separation. We have to get it, that separation just isn't how it is. And you think about the words of the old prayer, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." So heaven and earth are different places. Huh? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, not really. Where is it? "For thine is the kingdom, the mm-hmm. power and the glory." But hang on, the kingdom is not separate from us. Yeah. "Our Father who art in heaven." Well, that makes it sound like he's not here. And you know how when I was at school, the sort of version of reality that was given to kids with scripture teaching was, God's in heaven and we're on earth.
Right.
and we need to communicate with him, and
Mhm.
we're asking for forgiveness. That's what confession is about, isn't it? Getting forgiveness for the things we've done wrong.
Mhm.
And that's just so alien to the way that the miracles and the course of love
Mhm.
talk about reality. Can I just read that quote out of
Yeah, the one on
about forgiveness?
forgiveness. Yeah, are you going to read that on forgiveness? True
Yeah.
forgiveness.
So this is chapter 16 in the course part of Course of Love. True forgiveness simply looks past illusion to the truth, where there are no sins to be forgiven, no wrongs to be pardoned. Forgiveness looks on innocence and sees it where judgment would see it not.
Yeah. Yeah, and
So,
that's, yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, that's the true forgiveness is all forgiveness is really for ourselves. We're forgiving ourselves for our own judgments and projections.
mm,
And then ultimately, there's nothing to forgive when we wipe the
mm,
slate clean. But
mm,
yeah, I love the way you brought that point out that God doesn't forgive because God doesn't judge. And by the
mm,
way, I'm going to put the links in the comments just for everyone to know that James has a full discussion in the Course of Love Embrace newsletter. I'll put the link for that, and also on a podcast with our lovely Australian friend Helen Reynolds, and also in Queensland. So I'll put the links up for that, and you can actually go to the true and the full discussion of it.
well, I just wanted to say one other thing that has helped me see everything differently and got me into this, because in around about 1980 somewhere, I got involved in a personal growth movement in Sydney when personal growth movement was very much the fashion. And as a result, I was taught to meditate. And I became a daily meditator and have been that for the last 42 years, except for when urgent things happened and I couldn't do it. Um, but what came out of that for me was a way of looking at life that has changed my perspective in many ways. And I realized that there are three things that we think of that do not exist. And one, there's no such thing as a victim. There's no such thing as a coincidence. There's no such thing as an accident. Because we, as eternal spirits, chose the situation we were going to get born into. We
Mm-hmm.
chose the life we're living, and we're actually part of creation, creating the life we need in order to learn what we need to learn so we can get back to who we really are.
Mm-hmm.
And in which case, when something happens that looks like a massive coincidence, yeah, well, maybe it is and maybe it isn't, but for me, it isn't. So I just see things when things go well for me. I think, well, I must be in the flow because it's all just, happening the way that it needs to. And if something goes wrong, then, whoa, there must be some sort of lesson here. What is it that I'm not seeing?
Mm-hmm.
Because if I was in the flow, it would all be going smoothly and to my obvious gain.
Yeah.
Whereas if something goes wrong, then there must be something I can learn from this. So when I see something, well, hasn't happened to me recently because I must be living in the flow because it's all been going really well.
Yeah.
But this is a way that I've found I can sometimes help other people and have helped myself in the past by seeing an obstruction and realizing that here's a lesson. It's a gift for me.
Yeah.
What is it that I need to learn? And if I can learn it, the obstruction will go away.
Yeah.
And it does.
Yeah, I love that. All lessons are gifts. Yeah, everything,
Mm.
and it actually, it's all a blessing. When after it's all over.
Yeah.
Yeah, it all really turns into a blessing, and there's grace in every moment and every experience if we're just open to it. And so, yeah, I think this whole notion of unity and living in the flow and being who we are, you know, people, when they hear that, they think, well, you just sit on, you sit on a log and you don't do anything, or you just sit, you never do anything. But it's not necessarily saying that you won't do something, or, it's like you can't have a job or whatever, but it's like, from where are you drawing forth in any moment? And the true response always comes from source, from unity, and that is within us. As you were saying with your prayer, the kingdom of heaven is within us. It's not a place out there. We don't have to ask for anything, really, because it's all already given in us. And actually, Course in Miracles actually says that the word, when it says the kingdom of heaven is within us, the within is not even necessary. The kingdom of heaven is us. And I just love that. And then Course of Love has that chapter on prayer as well, saying that, true prayer is not really a prayer of entreaty. It's because then you're asking for something that you feel you don't have, when it's all already been given. And the prerequisite for true prayer is union. And so that's, that your prayer just all points to that. It's like our true abundance is all here now. And we're guided, when there's inspiration and we're guided to do something, it's like, follow the movement, follow the guidance. It's okay when you're inspired, but there's a different energy that comes with it that I've noticed. Like when it's effortful and you're trying to force something to happen, the energy feels constricted, and there's resistance there. There's resistance, and it's a completely different energy than being in the flow, because flow is like a peaceful energy, and there's an openness, there's no hardness, there's no armor, there's no resistance, and you're just going with the inspiration. And sometimes it's to do nothing.
I sort of boiled this down over my recent time to, how do you live in the flow? And the answer comes down to basically just a few words. We have to be aware that there is a flow. We have to be willing, and that's a profound level. We have to be willing to do this, to be this, and we have to surrender. And the surrender is about knowing that in the big picture sense, the small m me cannot do this. I've got to surrender to my higher self, the universe, whatever words you want to put on it. But there's another thing we have to do as well. When we've done that and we've surrendered, we have to pay attention. We have to listen to the thoughts that I didn't think, the sudden feeling about, well, maybe I should be doing that. And the Course talks in the dialogues area about the way of Jesus and the way of Mary. And I think that's a really good example, because it's saying, some people, when they just want to be, they will be led to get out there and change the world, as Jesus did, by being who he was out there in public, so to speak. And social media and the internet makes all that, so much easier. But there are other people who aren't told to do any of that. They're just told to be who they are. And the being who they are, if they're really being who they are in the now, then that's the way of Mary. And the subtle effect of having people who are living and doing the day-to-day stuff. They've still got to shop, and they've still got to cook, and they've still got to eat, and they still need to visit friends, but they're just being who they are and not out there trying to change the world. And that's the way of Mary. And people will, when they get into the flow, they will know which is their path.
And there's a I was going to say, the emanation of the grace and the love, and it's sometimes, like I said, it's like you don't need to do anything, and you're just radiating that out. And
exactly.
Gandhi said, be the change. We need not wait on to see what others do. We can just be the change. And then sometimes, like you said, some of us are inspired to do something or say something, but that becomes the true response, because it's coming It's coming from the heart. And another flavor to it is not any attachment to outcomes. That's hard to do also. And I think that goes on along with your surrender.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
hard sometimes to, but I think that's part of being in the flow, is not to be attached to any kind of outcomes. You're doing it, because you feel inspired. It's coming from spirit. It's coming from your heart. And there's no clinging to outcomes.
Well, when you're in the flow, whatever it is that is perfect.
Yeah, it's all perfect here and now.
Like it said, consciously living in the flow of loving creation fulfills all needs to perfection. It's just, it's okay, how it is.
Yeah, I was just going to say, that when you keep mentioning the thoughts you do not think, I just wanted to say that to me, that's like the revelation that comes through. It's not coming through the thinking mind. It's actually coming from the shared consciousness of unity. And oftentimes we do get those flashes of insights or these aha moments, or like you were saying, these lines came in with a new Lord's Prayer, and you had no idea where they were coming from. And but it comes from the shared consciousness of unity. And I've also often heard, musicians talk about this. I think even Paul McCartney talked about it. I think when he did Yesterday, he had a dream and he heard all the notes in the dream, the music, he heard it. It was already there. It came from the shared consciousness of unity. He woke up, he went to his piano, and it just flowed. But it was already there. It wasn't something he thought about or had to make happen. He heard the music in a dream, woke up, went to the piano, and it all flowed out. And Michelangelo said the same thing with his sculptures. So we're kind of coming up on our time, and I just wanted to end this video dialogue here with a beautiful quote from chapter 20, The Embrace. And this is it. I'll read it. It says, "Love is the source of your being. You flow from love, an outpouring without end. You are thus eternal." And I just love that. It's so elevating. It's so illuminating. And so it's time to end. I just wanted to thank everyone, all our viewers out there, for listening. And we'll have another video next time, a new topic, new guest. So peace, love, grace, and blessings to all. And thank you so much, James, for joining us today. It's really been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Lynn. That was great. Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye, everyone.